So here's my actual problem with feeding the Bovier methane inhibitor. We had in the UK 15.2 million cows in 1974. Now we've got 9.6 million, so just about 2/3. And the problem is that while methane is considered a greenhouse gas, it has a short atmospheric lifespan of between 10 and 12 years. During that time, methane reacts with hydroxyl radicals in the atmosphere and breaks down into carbon dioxide and water. So since 1974, in real terms, we have reduced the amount of carbon impact from the UK cattle herd probably by about 1/3, just by having 1/3 less cows. But it's really irrelevant. There is no impact on warming through methane because it's a cycle. The CO2 released from the methane is basically the same CO2 that was absorbed by the food that the cows eat during photosynthesis, so the grass or the maize or whatever it should be. So it's a cycle, it has no impact. So a stable cattle herd, which we've got now as a fairly stable cattle herd, has no impact. Yet there's talk about reducing cow numbers and all this stuff. It's a cop-out. It's a cop-out. It's an easy target. We are an easy target. The only way to actually reduce carbon is really to stop burning fossil fuels. Like, that is really about it. And whether or not that is actually required, and whether or not this whole climate change thing isn't an absolute cherry-picked data hoax, is debatable. But certainly a lot of the data is cherry-picked. Now, I can see the idea of feeding a methane inhibitor with the idea to drive down basically methane levels to come out, but all it's going to do is really lower things in the short term. It could be considered that by feeding methane inhibitors to all cattle, it will basically break this steady state equilibrium and will drive down the overall, there'll be a net reduction in atmospheric methane, so a net reduction in overall carbon. But it can only be considered a short-term win, and it can only be considered a short-term win if it actually works. CO2 persists for centuries, while methane persists for about 10 years. But that CO2, if you want to eat food, cows, animals are going to have to eat food, and that food absorbs that CO2 out of the atmosphere. So I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. If these methane inhibitors worked as efficiently as we would like them to work, but they obviously don't. The short-term studies, I believe, are probably short-term for a reason. There is some data to show that they may stop having an effect as the cow's microbiome adjusts and things basically head back to normal. So I suppose the easy way to explain it is the cows get used to them and it goes back to normal, which would probably make sense. Like, if you take anything for a prolonged period of time, like quite often if you are prescribed a drug for whatever and you're taking it for a long period of time, your body adjusts and you need more of it to get the same effect. And I think that could be basically what's happening here. I get it, the less methane we emit, the smaller the impact is over time, but I don't think it's going to actually work that way. It's not going to help move towards carbon neutrality goals. It just seems like a massive waste of money and a PR issue, box ticking issue, as I said, and it's all gone pretty horribly wrong.